Hello and welcome to FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today I have Toma Puljak with me, and welcome, Toma. I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Hi, thank you for having me over.
So you work at Codeanywhere. What do you do at Codeanywhere?
So at Codeanywhere, my let's say position officially is just a software developer, but since we are a small company, I tend to do a lot more. So we're kind of a startup. We're basically an 11-year-old startup because we're that's going live in a couple of days or weeks. And so my job description would be software development, but also talking to clients, business to business clients, and setting up custom integrations for those clients, any specialized tooling they might need, and just let's say talking with them to see what they need from our product to integrate into their company.
Okay, and you mentioned that it's a small company. How small are we talking? Like, how many people, including the executives as well, are in the company? And is it just one big team, or is there still a few smaller teams as well?
So I'd say we're kind of a one small team because we're all closely, let's say, integrated, and do we basically operate on a basis where basically everyone knows everything. So the company is, I think, 12 or 13 people currently, and let's say the core team of the company is about 5 people. And then on the side, we have support agents, some ops people, and a couple of software developers as well.
Okay, fair enough. And so that new, product that you said is coming out soon. Can you share any information about that,
Yeah, of
or is
course.
there anything shared about it right now?
Yeah, of course. So the product, let me start like from the beginning of Codeanywhere. So Codeanywhere started 10 years ago as a company that was offering a cloud-based IDE. We were actually one of the first into the space, into the cloud IDE space. Because our founders actually just wanted to make a browser-based ID where they can connect over FTP or SSH into their servers and then do some lightweight coding that needs to be done on, let's say, a production server. And then they moved on to workspaces that were basically some kind of containers for, I don't know, Python, C++, HTML, and so on. And now this new product that we're launching, we've been working for like 3 years now, I think, and it's very close to launch. We're actually currently in an A/B test phase, and the product itself is basically a platform where developers can spin up cloud-based development environments, fully fledged development environments, not just the IDE. And these environments are container-based. You can spin up basically anything that can be spun up with, I don't know, Docker, for example. It runs on Kubernetes, and it can be deployed on-prem. So we have business-to-business clients that actually deploy the platform in their own infrastructure on their any cloud that they want. We can deploy the infrastructure, and the platform itself basically allows developers to quickly spin up development environments that are always ready to code and are exactly the same every time they're spun up. So we really try to make the development process more efficient by moving into the cloud and offloading that work from your local machines.
Okay, so these containers, talk a bit more about them because I know that's more recent in the company's history. Why would somebody want to use a container in general, and then why would somebody want to use a code anywhere container versus using a Docker container, for example?
Okay, so actually, the way we, let's say, operate our development environments, they are based on, let's say, a concept called infrastructure as code, but translated over to development environments. And we actually implement the Microsoft Dev Container standard. It's an open source standard developed by Microsoft where you basically describe your entire development environment through code. And with that configuration, let's say the dev container configuration, you can specifically say what your development environment needs for that specific project. So for example, I'm running I don't know, Python with Postgres, so I can just write in standard Docker Compose that I want a Python container with these dependencies inside the Docker file, and I want the Postgres database as a service to the Docker Compose, and we take that configuration and we basically spin up the entire development environment in the cloud. So there's no, let's say, Codeanywhere containers here. It's just all of it is open standard Docker containers and the dev containers or development containers developed by Microsoft.
Okay. And why would a developer want to use a container versus a plain old FTP connection to the Code Anywhere IDE?
Okay, so basically, containerized development allows you to always have an instance of the development environment where you know everything works. So I had a talk actually on a couple of conferences last year where I talked about how to solve the "but it works on my machine" problem with cloud-based development environments, and this "but it works on my machine" problem is I'd say ever-present problem where developers uh, have difficulty spinning up their projects on their own local machines because not all local machines are the same for each developer. And whereas when you have a containerized development environment, you always know what goes into the environment, and you always know that once the project works inside a container, every other container that's spun up will have no problem running the entire project. So I say the main benefit is that developers know that the project they are working on is going to work inside that container. There's not going to be any debugging problems, any dependency problems, any installation problems. It should just work out of the box every time.
Okay, so it should just work. So, how do these containers visually look for the user? When they log on, like what are they seeing on the screen?
Yeah, so the way it works is we give developers what we call a dashboard, and from that dashboard, you can just paste your Git repository URL. I should mention that our entire workflow is actually what we call Git. Means that our workspaces and the projects that you're working on are all, let's say, derived from your Git repository. That means you can come onto our platform, just paste your Git repository URL into the dashboard or just into the URL of the browser, and we basically clone that repository inside our so-called workspace, and then we find the configuration for the environment and we spin up the entire workspace that you need to run the project actually.
Okay, and so these Git projects that you can, assign or copy and paste into these containers, like, what are the limitations? Like, does it have to be a certain type of project, like web-based only, or certain languages, certain frameworks? I'm assuming there's some restrictions.
Yeah, okay, so we tend to be as unrestricted as possible because it's all working inside Docker containers, or sorry, just any containers. We basically can run anything that can be run on Linux, for example. The
Okay.
type of restrictions we often say to our users and people who ask us on conferences and such is that we have difficulties for native development, for example, because of course we can't really run any emulators, or I don't know, iOS or Mac development because it's such a closed ecosystem. We can't really run Macs in the cloud on our platform. So I'd say that anything that's not native development can run at 100% on our platform. But with native development, there are some workarounds to enabling like emulators using, I don't know, VNC and stuff like that.
Okay, so would that mean, let's say, if I have a Git repository, it's a video game, and it's using some framework that plugs in with, let's say, Android Studio, which is supported on, Mac OS, it's supported on Windows, supported on Linux. Would that work or no? Or like how, like what would work and what wouldn't?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not actually sure on big on Android Studio, but what needs to be like available in Android Studio for this to work is remote development. So, for example, Visual Studio Code now has remote development in the form of your local ID connecting via SSH into remote environments, and because our environments are running in the cloud or basically remotely, you would need an ID that that can connect via SSH into these environments. So, for example, we work with Visual Studio Code, we work with any JetBrains IDs, and I don't know, Vim or something that can connect via SSH. So, if Android Studio were to ever release a remote development extension or a plugin or whatever, you could run such a setup. But regarding games specifically, I know that the games require game engines to be available locally, and they take up a lot of processing power and stuff like that. So game development currently is not something that we can fully support, but is something that's on our radar for the coming releases.
Okay, so what, if any, things should a developer do to set their Git, repository up to work as seamless as possible? Because I'm guessing is there any sort of extra setup that you would recommend for the Git repository to work in these containers?
So from the get-go, you can actually get away with running most of your setup just without any installation or configurations, because we offer, if we detect that the Git repository doesn't have a dev container configuration, we provide what we call a universal container, which has most of the popular languages like Ruby, C++, C Sharp, Python, and stuff like that. But what we do recommend for repositories is that people just write their repository configuration, or sorry, the infrastructure configuration they need into the dev container specification. The dev container specification is available online, it's open source, so people can just containerize their runtime, and then that dev container specification is enough for us to give you a fully featured environment, which will have all of your project dependencies ready to go once you go inside the workspace.
Okay, and is that specification something that Codeanywhere has created, or is it a more industry standard specification?
So basically, a couple of years ago when we started, we actually developed our own configuration. It was called codeanywhere.yaml, the file was called, and it really resembled Docker Compose. But once we went along with the project, I think last year, we actually shifted towards the open standard dev container configuration from Microsoft, because we found that we believe that it's better to adopt a standard that's more widely known, and it's easier for us to maintain regarding features and regarding bugs, and we can contribute to the open source configuration, and other people can also contribute. So we really believe in the open source standards like dev containers, so we decided to adopt that.
Okay, and like in terms of the code files on the Git repository, can they be in any folder? Like, if, for example, a lot of my Git repositories, I generally have a folder in the root of the repository called code, and all the code files, or the folders within that, like source files, header files, images, all that sort of stuff is within that. And outside of that, there might be documentation, readmes. Is there a particular sort of folder structure you would recommend, or does it just find the files and detect it automatically very well?
Yeah, so the way it works is we basically try to provide the exact same experience as you would have locally. So if you locally want to make a folder structure with, I don't know, 3 folders and then 4 subfolders, that's fine. So basically any kind of setup that would work locally on your machine will work in our cloud-based development environments. We simply don't want to change your experience of coding or developing the project. We just want to eliminate the need for ever having to debug dependency issues, installation issues, or ever have to worry about, does your computer have enough power to run the entire project. We eliminate those problems, but we keep the development workflow the same.
Okay, fair enough. And these, containers, because you said, I can link it up with GitHub. Is there a method for pushing the code back to GitHub
Yeah, of
and
course.
updating
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So as I said, once you have the repository, once we clone the repository inside the workspace, the same workflow as you have locally is going to work. So pushing, pulling to GitHub, because you authenticate yourself onto our platform with GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, we basically allow you to keep the exact same workflow where you can pull and push from the repository, change branches, or commit or whatever you want inside those cloud-based development environments.
Okay, and is it possible for me to, link this container with GitHub and then also link it with a live environment? So, I have, let's say, a live environment. Let's say I have that current version on GitHub, but I don't want to be testing on the live environment because maybe I've got thousands or tens of thousands of users. I whip up a container, link to GitHub, and I'd submit changes back and forth to GitHub. But when I'm happy with a particular build, I can press a button and have it submitted to the live environment. Is there a method for doing that?
So again, we don't actually, let's say, take over that. What we would call it deployment jobs or steps. So that sort of like the deployment strategy is on let's say your side, so you can do basically anything you want. You can make it so it's deployed from GitHub once the build runs from CI/CD, or you can actually use our development environments as sort of testing environments where you can spin up the project and you would get a live URL for a port that you're running, and you can share that URL with a client, for example, or any testers if you want. But we basically, from the point where you push to GitHub, the flow of deployment would be exactly the same. You would run a CI/CD pipeline, and then the deployment would take care of itself from GitHub.
From there. Okay. And so I personally love Codeanywhere. I've been using it for a number of years, way before containers were around and it was just an online code environment. I have friends that are developers as well. And when I try, yeah, it's one of those things. I think anyone does it, but especially developers where they have that thing they use where it's an IDE, in this case, a cloud environment or, a particular software, and they're trying to show their friends and get them on board with it as well because they just think it's like the best thing in the world. And for me, Codeanywhere has been a great help. I have friends who look at it, they say, why would they want to use that when they can just set up a FTP connection on their computer, use their preferred IDE? What do you say to those people? What's the value proposition for Codeanywhere that says, okay, this is what really makes me leave that sort of behind or not use it as much? Like, what would you say to those people?
Okay, so I think that there's two answers here. So one answer would refer back to our, let's say, current platform that we have live that you're probably using for the past couple of years. So regarding FTPing into a server, what Codeanywhere offers is that when you set up your FTP connection inside Codeanywhere, you can actually use any browser to log into that FTP server. Whereas if you have your local computer connected to FTP, only your computer can actually access those FTP servers. And that goes actually back to our founder's vision, where basically you can access your FTP server from any laptop, any computer that you want using Codeanywhere. And actually, I have a funny story where my laptop actually died out. Actually, not died out. I had to send it to service for a couple of days, and I actually coded on my phone using Codeanywhere because it's all running inside the browser. I can just hook up my phone to a monitor and I can code no problem.
I've done the same.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a situation where my laptop or anything died, but a few years ago I was out and I needed to make a urgent update on the live environment. And I had my phone. I downloaded. I'm pretty sure because there's an app, isn't there? I downloaded the app and logged in. I was just like, because it was just a few quick changes. I
Yep.
wouldn't do some hardcore, development on there, but I had to do a quick few changes. I was like, oh, crisis averted.
Yeah. So that's the, let's say, advantage of having a cloud-based, a browser-based editor or an app editor that can connect with FTP to a server. But the second answer is basically tied to our new platform that's coming out, and that's that we encourage people to make your workflow Git centric. So make your environment, or let's say your project and deployments, rely on Git and Git processes such as CI/CD and deployments using Git, and your development can then be containerized and handled by Codeanywhere, where you can just paste your repository into any browser, any dashboard of Codeanywhere, and you can spin up a fully featured cloud-based environment that has an online ID that can connect with VS Code or JetBrains or any ID, and then that's, I'd say, the fastest form of development, where you can just spin up a development environment really quickly and then let your Git processes handle the deployment after that.
Okay. And these containers, how do they handle databases? Because raw files, let's say HTML and JavaScript, is one thing, but how do they handle databases that's linked in with, PHP, for example?
Yeah, so for databases, we recommend using Docker Compose. So you can have a service that's one service with PHP that's for your development, and one service for Postgres or Mongo, or whatever database you want. And you can link these services with any protocol, any port, I guess, and then have your development container, the, let's say, main container of PHP, connect to the database via port, just a standard port that you can open using Docker Compose. And this sort of development basically allows you to spin up a database inside your development environment, but you can also go the other way around, where you can have a database externally hosted on some other hosting provider or website or whatever, and then connect from your development environment to that external database. So both options work. We do recommend Docker Compose and using a separate service for your database inside the environment.
Okay, so the database side of it is separate. The code anywhere containers will set up the environment, set up the code files so they're working, and then you hook it up with some sort of connection to, like, Docker, for example, for the database. Do you have any plans of doing, bringing the database side more in house?
No, not sure if you got me with my answer. So basically, the database side of things is exactly the same as the let's say PHP setup or Python setup, where you describe what database you want inside that Docker Compose dev container configuration, and then we spin up the configuration inside your environment, and the database would be available inside the environment. So I don't know, you need Postgres or Mongo database, you just write that down into the Docker Compose, and then once we create the development environment, the actual database will be present inside the development environment and just available to you to that environment.
Ah, okay, that clears up things a bit. So these containers, how quick do they get new programming language, versions and any, frameworks, let's say like React, for example, like how quick do they get new versions? Like what's the sort of, pro testing process, if any, does Code Anywhere has to make sure things work? And how easily, if at all, can you select older versions
Okay,
of a particular
yeah.
language?
So Codeanywhere actually doesn't handle any of that, and that's the beauty of containerized development environments. On our old product, I'd say that we had to make sure ourselves manually that all the programming language versions were up to date and testing it out and stuff like that. But when you have containerized development environments, basically anything goes. So anything that the developer wants to run, for example, wants to install React, wants to install Ruby or Python 3.1, they can specify the version and everything inside the Docker configuration that they set up for themselves. And because Codeanywhere uses Docker containers or open standard containers, we basically allow you to spin up anything from those containers inside our platform. So any version of Python that's available on Docker Hub or your own container version will run inside Codeanywhere. So as a company and basically at Codeanywhere, we don't handle like version updates for languages and stuff like that. It's all, let's say, diverted into the hands of the developer that wants to install anything they want into the development environment.
Okay, so they, like you said, they get to choose that, I want React in this container, and I want you to be, version X, and then you just do it.
Yeah, they set it up for
And
themselves. They commit to Git, and then from that point on, we just clone the Git repository, and then it's spun up from the container configuration.
okay, so there's seems like there's a fair bit that Codeanywhere does, and there's a lot to it. Are there any sort of guides and tutorials out there that Codeanywhere provides for people that are new to not just Code Anywhere, but this sort of cloud-based development?
Yeah, so we're actively working on some blog posts that will explain more about cloud-based development environments. We have a newsletter where we go through some of the most popular cloud-based topics. We also have a documentation site where we plan to actually make examples for different projects using different technologies. We also have currently available in the dashboard of the new product, we have template repositories with different projects, for example, for Ruby, C++, Python, C Sharp, some of the most popular frameworks and languages. And we plan to update that list to make it easier for new developers that are coming along to set up their projects and check out how they can basically create a configuration for any of their projects that they might need.
Okay, fair enough. And what's your preferred programming language and why? Actually, no. Before that question, what programming language do you primarily use at Code Anywhere for? Building out these platforms, and
So
what's the tech stack there?
yeah, so the tech stack at Codeanywhere is TypeScript and Go. I think that's basically 99% of our tech stack. So programming language wise, we also use Kubernetes a lot because our cloud based development environments are spun up using Kubernetes inside Kubernetes clusters. We basically handle all of our deployments on some Kubernetes cluster, if it's on prem or just our SaaS platform. We also use, I don't know, technologies like Helm, Terraform for deployments, standard CI/CD processes, and stuff like that. But programming language-wise, it's TypeScript and Go. I think 99% of the code base.
Okay, so why TypeScript and Go versus some of the other languages out there? Like, so sell it to users. Like, why would you want to use TypeScript over JavaScript and Go versus, I don't know, some other alternative?
Yeah, okay. So TypeScript over JavaScript, I think there's no debate there. I think TypeScript should be used 100% of the time, or 99% of the time, if not 100. So TypeScript, why we started with TypeScript, because I think TypeScript is very easy to prototype with. It's very fast to write. It's easy basically to make entire projects really fast, whereas with C Sharp or Java, for example, it's, let's say, there's a lot more boilerplate that needs to go into coding a project with those languages, and we started off with TypeScript because we were comfortable with it the most, I'd say. And Go, we use Go for our components that go inside a workspace, because Go is really a really fast and efficient language. So we want our code that's running inside the workspaces to be really fast, really efficient, and really small in size. So we basically made the components in Go that will run inside the workspace, and all of the other logic, the backend, front end, is written in TypeScript.
Okay, what's your preferred programming language and why?
So I'd say that TypeScript is my preferred language because it's really fast and easy to write. It's, I don't know, it's really I don't know. I've been using it for I think 5 or 6 years now, and I really enjoy it. I'd say the second language I would go for is probably C Sharp or Go. At this point, I like C Sharp over Java because, I don't know, it's just my preference. I guess I think you go C Sharp or Java either way. It's one or the other for most developers. And Go, I've been enjoying Go for the last couple of months, writing the new components for Go Codeanywhere, and I find Go really a really easy language where you can't do anything wrong, because Go as a language basically forbids you to write bad code because of the formatting, because of the how the language is structured. So I really enjoy Go and its syntax.
Okay. And with the Codeanywhere, just the online IDE, can you run TypeScript within that or not?
So of course, I mean, so the current version that we have on our Code Anywhere can run TypeScript. Of course, we have some Node containers available right out of the box, but with the new version of Code Anywhere, you can basically run anything that you want, TypeScript included. Our browser-based IDE supports full syntax highlighting, code completion, IntelliSense, or whatever you want inside the browser, but you can also use VS Code or any JetBrains IDE to run and to write TypeScript code.
Okay. We've talked about what programming language you prefer. Which one do you utterly despise using?
So I'd say I utterly despise using. I mean, I don't utterly despise using any language, I guess. I mean, I've hated Python for a couple of years now, but because of I'm actually studying computer science, so I've been using Python a lot for the past couple of years, so I had to get used to it, I guess. But I don't really like Python, its syntax, or basically its slowness. But I'd say I despise, not despise, but I don't like Java as well. Not sure why, because I actually coded a lot in Java as well in school or at the university. But Java, I never got the hang of Java. Its syntax or some of its, let's say, features I don't really like. So I guess Python and Java are on the bottom of my likeness list for programming languages.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Python either. I don't like that indentation is the equivalent
Yeah.
of scope.
Yep.
It's just not nice because you can easily make mistakes with that. Whereas if you just have curly braces and semicolons for ending a code line, you know where things start and end. No matter how poorly formatted your code
Yep.
is, obviously you should always have it formatted well, but it's easy, when you're in the flow of development to have a few things out of line.
Yep.
It happens.
Yep. Definitely.
And yeah, that's the thing I don't like about Python. But I think the problem is because it's pretty easy to teach and get your head around it and start using it.
Yep.
It's taught a lot at schools and now universities, especially at schools, because there's teachers that I know that teach IT or computer science at just like a school, not a university, but they're not programmers themselves really,
Yeah.
but they're like a mathematician or they were an IT teacher and they were able to pick up, some Python and, do some basic stuff with it. But if they try to do that with JavaScript even or C++ especially, they will just fail because it takes a longer time for them to understand that. So as a result, there's a lot of students coming out of the educational system with Python as their main language, which I mean, I don't think is the best thing, but yeah, I guess it is what it is
Yeah, I
in
mean
terms of
it's
that.
very easy to learn, and I guess because like machine learning and AI are getting more and more popular, Python will get more and more popularity because I think Python is the go-to language for ML now because of all
It
of
is,
its
yeah.
tooling and because basically all the ML tooling is oriented around Python. You can't really go around it if you want to do any serious machine learning or AI.
No, yeah, like the concern I have is not everyone that knows Python out of the education system is going to come in into the industry and start doing, machine learning and AI based stuff. It's
Yep.
just not going to
Yeah,
happen.
definitely.
And if they try and go to another sort of role that isn't Python related, and let's say C, C++, or something else, I feel like they might struggle a bit. Whereas if somebody's a bit more of a hardcore C++ developer or Java or C Sharp, if they want to, they can switch a lot easier to using Python if they need to, or JavaScript, for
Yeah, I'd
example.
say
So,
that's correct.
so that's the concern I have. I mean, we'll see how it pans out over the next 10 to 20 years because that's what it's going to be. It's like how, if it over that time period we'll actually see if it actually has any negative impact or not. And I wonder if what might happen is that these other more traditional based languages and even frameworks become sort of almost legacy, and as a result anyone that needs them pays more for them
Yeah.
because there's not that many people because it's like there's people that most people don't learn Fortran or those old style languages, but there are a few jobs out there that require these old languages, for legacy platforms, and as a result, they pay good money for them
Yep.
compared to some other entry level job. So I wonder if that might happen with some of these more sort of normal programming languages of today, but in a few years they might become kind of like legacy
Yep.
and
Uh,
specialized.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, if not, we have the different issue of like AI writing code for us and not
Hmm.
like the language is going obsolete. Like, I'd say that the much more probable situation is that AI takes over more of the jobs than the languages themselves becoming obsolete or forgotten or legacy.
Yeah. So my opinion on with the AI thing is, I think eventually it will take over a lot of jobs, and hopefully we get a balance of it essentially producing a lot for the economy, and people don't, let's say, need the jobs as much, or they can do less hours the week, less days, hopefully in an idealistic world. But I think in the interim it'll be just coders leveraging the tools, because I was using chat gpt last week, just having a look at it on my phone, and I just put in like C++ bubble sort, and and it came up with the code for C++ bubble sort. And I know I can Google it, but I would have to open a few links, figure out which one's which. I looked at it because I know what the bubble sort algorithm looks like. I was like, that looks like what you would implement, optimally implement for bubble sort. And then I typed in Cocos 2DX, which is a game engine, shapes, and then it came up with like about 7-8 lines of code for doing shapes in that thing. And I was like, instead of me going through YouTube videos or going through documentation, I'm able to put like 2 or 3 words in, and it's pumping out the code for it. Imagine if I'm a developer and I just quickly need some algorithm or need something, type it in, and if it pumps it out and I'll just copy and paste it, like that's going to be a huge deal. Like especially with competent developers already, it's just going to aid them even more.
Yeah, I'd say I actually wrote a blog piece a couple of weeks back regarding that, let's say, issue where it's called like, is AI a convenient crutch for developers or a convenient crutch for new developers, and that meaning new developers actually wouldn't so much benefit from tooling such as ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, because I mean, it's the same argument where why do you have to, in school, why do you have to write code on a piece of paper and not just on your machine? And like, or why do you need to do stuff in math by hand and not by calculator? And I think it's because uh, newcomers or new developers, they need to learn all of these concepts first, because before they actually go into ChatGPT and requesting something and then copying and paste it into some code, because ChatGPT might know most of the answers, but some of the answers is not going to do optimally or not going to do correctly at all. And new developers might not actually realize the mistake that those AI assistants are offering, and they might just paste the wrong code, which will be then hard to debug by someone else. So I think that AI should be like considered just an assistant for developers that need to, let's say, write code more efficiently. I use GitHub Copilot a lot actually, because I just think it makes me faster. I don't really use it so much for some, I don't know, groundbreaking answers or some business logic that I need implementing. I just use it because it's fast autocomplete. I don't really use it so much to basically give me new ideas or stuff like that. I think that AI assistants should just be used by developers that know what they're doing and know what they want. They just want it quicker, I'd say. That's something that AI currently offers. Not sure about the future, but I think that new developers should really be careful about the code they're pasting from ChatGPT into some other code.
Oh yeah, like I agree. I think it should be like a pro assistant tool. Somebody that knows the code that's come out of it, or that can dry run it. In in their head or on
Yeah.
paper. But instead of them constantly retyping it or googling it just to get this algorithm or this little thing. They can use it as an advanced form of like Google search for programming documentation. So I think in that scenario, it definitely can aid them. But I agree, like I think we're going to see that. We're going to see a lot of junior level developers that come in, that hear about ChatGPT or some of the AI based rival, and they hear that, oh, you can type a quick question in, you can get some code, they'll copy and paste it in, and I think it might work for a little bit. But when they have to do something that's for now, a bit more creative and not, more, just search based, when they have to actually tweak it and modify it and actually do something unique to the, the business and the company. And let's say, eventually the AI will probably be able to do it, especially if the information about that company is more public. But let's say if it's something that's not public and they're trying to figure things out, there I think the junior developers will struggle, and I think you will probably maybe even have issues at the university level with. I mean, I wonder how that would work with plagiarism, like at university, because if you go online, copy code or copy something and put it into your dissertation, that's considered
Yeah,
plagiarism.
of course, of course.
But I wonder how it would work with an AI generating
Yeah, so
something.
I think most people underestimate like plagiarism detectors. I think that it's gonna be a huge issue now with I don't know dissertations or thesis for universities, because students will think that I don't know they just generate code over ChatGPT and paste it into their dissertation, they're fine, but they underestimate how easy it is to actually detect that some and that some essay or a paragraph is generated by AI. There are already a couple of websites and different methods for detecting if a piece of text or software is written using ChatGPT, and I think it as time goes on, it's going to be more easier to detect these plagiarism attempts. So I think students should be careful. I think it's fine to use ChatGPT to make suggestions for, I don't know, paragraphs for papers or presentations or stuff like that. But like hard copying and pasting into papers, it's really going to be easy to detect it, and I think people should be careful. I actually have my like master thesis coming up, and I'm like scared to even write anything inside ChatGPT because I know it's easy to detect, and I don't want it to have any influence over my paper because I'm like kind of scared that it's gonna affect the plagiarism score that comes in the end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the thing, because I've been a lecturer before as well. The thing with the plagiarism score is they actually look for you to have some percentage of, because they don't want it zero, and they obviously don't want it high and be at 100, but they want some percentage because they want it essentially. When you're writing an essay, essentially that that you're referencing and quoting other things, and obviously as long as you properly acknowledged it, they want that. So they actually want an element of not plagiarism, but the plagiarism thing to pick things up. It's just when it's too high that it causes issues, and if it's too low, then they're like, oh, you haven't really referenced or researched stuff as much as you should have done. So you don't want it too low either. But yeah, there definitely is that thing, in education, especially what will happen with plagiarism based stuff. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing over the next few years, how this really changes the landscape of programming, writing dissertations at university, and maybe even lecturers and educators writing exam papers and writing, coursework specifications, or even job specs, job specifications, even, for, employers. Because if an employer, instead of writing, I don't know, an A4 or two A4 pages of a job spec, if they can just say, we need, we need JavaScript, we need some exposure to TypeScript, we need, HTML, Bootstrap, a few of these other things, and that we want X amount of experience, like 4 or 5 bullet points, and he just expands it out, and you just put, what your company is. Let's say it's a finance company, for like a fintech company. Then he just expands it out into a 2 page, job spec, and I think employers, will probably be thinking, what, we can just get HR to do this instead of spending time creating a job spec. I mean, maybe even recruiters, because I know when I've spoken to recruiters before, sometimes they don't have job spec ready for it. They might just generate a quick job spec just so they can put it on the platform, so there's something for people to read in the interim. So I think that would be an interesting thing to see if chat gpt can be used in those scenarios. And does Code Anywhere have you know any plans with chat gpt or ai based stuff in their applications?
Yeah, so first to go back on your your thought, I think it's fine for companies to use it for like generating job postings or even blog posts here and then, but just not to overkill it. I think. I think it's fine to use AI where you just need the job to be quicker. If it's some, I don't know, copying pasting code, you need to refactor some functions in code or refactor a few paragraphs in your blog post. It's fine to use Chat GPT for those things, but I don't think it's fine to for any creative work. And to go back on your like references in thesis and dissertations, I mean, plague scans and software like that actually ignore referenced paragraphs and referenced sentences. So again, it's really easy to detect those not referenced sentences that were written by ChatGPT. And I actually used ChatGPT for some piece of paper for a paper I did on at my university, not writing the entire paper, but for references actually, because ChatGPT is really efficient in like searching its data for references for certain ideas. So for using it for references for paper is fine, but you just again need to check those references that ChatGPT outputted. And regarding AI and Code Anywhere now, so we currently don't have any like active projects regarding AI specifically, but you could use Code Anywhere to develop AI inside these cloud-based development environments. But we are, I mean, because we're, let's say, preoccupied with running the launch and launching the product and getting everything up to speed, we do have some AI ideas that we're not disclosing just of yet, but they're, I think we will find a way to leverage AI into our workflow in some different ways in the future.
Okay, that sounds interesting. I mean, I look forward to any and all announcements regarding that. So, what are the leading competitors in the sort of, cloud environment with, the cloud IDE and the container environment? What are the other people in this space that you're competing with?
Yeah, so I think we have like three primary competitors. I'd say that's Gitpod, GitHub Codespaces, and Coder. I'd say. So Gitpod and GitHub Codespaces are, I think, the closest to our platform, especially GitHub Codespaces because they use the exact same Microsoft Dev Container open standard. And I'd say the difference between us and GitHub Codespaces is that we offer our platform as an on-prem installation, so companies can basically have their own installation of Code Anywhere running inside their company infrastructure. And also, we're not vendor locked in, and that means that Code Anywhere could be used with GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, basically any Git provider. Whereas with GitHub Codespaces, you're of course locked into GitHub. Um, as for Gitpod, Gitpod is an open source platform as well that offers cloud based development environments. And with Gitpod, Gitpod has its own proprietary standard called gitpod.yaml file, where they basically are locked into that specification. And they also offer, as does Code Anywhere, they offer like connecting with VS Code locally and JetBrains locally and stuff like that. And with Coder, the let's say the differences between Code Anywhere and Coder is that Code Anywhere is much more Git centric, and Coder basically allows you to spin up development environments in VMs or Macs or anything that they basically handle the deployment of development environments in a different way to Codeanywhere, because they don't use any configuration file. You can just use Coder to spin up, I don't know, EC2 instances over AWS, or spin up Macs in the cloud or stuff like that. Whereas Codeanywhere allows you to just paste a Git repository URL into the platform and then get a fully featured development environment running from that Git repository.
Okay. And what would you say that Code Anywhere does, that these other, cloud environments don't? Like, what gives Code Anywhere the edge? Why would somebody want to use Code Anywhere versus, Gitpod, for example, GitHub Spaces?
Yeah, so I'd say that our let's say the primary benefit of Code Anywhere is that we offer a sealed on-premise installation. I know actually Gitpod a couple of weeks or months ago they actually pulled on their offering where they offered on-premise installation. They just now offer managed hosting by Gitpod, whereas Codeanywhere offers companies a fully sealed installation in their infrastructure that is managed by the company itself. So any infrastructure they want, Codeanywhere can be deployed on it. And regarding the, let's say, SaaS offering, where let's say single developers come onto the platform using their browser, I'd say Gitpod and Codeanywhere are pretty similar with the offering. It's just that Codeanywhere implements um, the dev container specification standard, and Gitpod has its own proprietary configuration. But I think the main benefit of like on-premise installation for companies is the security that comes with the on-premise installation, and also with Codeanywhere offering some customizations for companies. For example, companies that need some extra special tooling, they have developed in-house connected to Codeanywhere. We offer services like that to basically allow companies to integrate Codeanywhere as tightly as possible to their current ecosystem.
Okay. So, just moving on, we're here on a podcast. I haven't really found many hardcore developer oriented podcasts. Do you have any you would recommend that you know of?
So I actually listened to a few podcasts back a couple of months ago. I stopped for some reason. I don't know. I actually was heavy into podcasts and audiobooks. I think last year or the year before that. I just stopped in the meantime. I don't know why. I just got busy, I guess. But I think it was a React focused podcast, and it was some cloud focused podcast. I actually don't remember the name of it. It was a while back. So, but I think there are some good like hardcore development podcasts. There's also um, one focused actually on cloud development as well. Again, I don't know the name of it. I can drop you a link later, and you can, I guess, drop it in the description if you want.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
fantastic because, obviously this is a podcast that has developers, artists, anyone that develops products, at some, capacity or has links to, developing products. But, I'm just thinking if there's any like real hardcore programming and developer oriented podcast, that would be great. So yeah, anything that you have, if you just let me know,
Yep.
I'll put it in the, the link. So anyone that's listening, you can, check that
Yeah,
out.
definitely.
Did you go to university? If so, what did you study?
Yeah, so I'm currently studying computer science. So I have a bachelor's in just like regular, I guess, computer engineering, and now I'm on a master's for computer science. I'm actually, this is my last semester now. It just started last week, where I just need to write my master thesis, and I that's it. I'm studying in on the University of Zagreb here in Croatia. So, I mean, I've been pretty satisfied with these 5 years, I guess. I'd say that because I started so young with like software development and working in the industry, I guess the first 3 years of school, or basically my bachelor's degree, really didn't so much affect my career. But now on the computer science side, I guess I learned a lot with about AI or ML and stuff like that at university.
Okay, so Code Anywhere is, California based, I believe. Are you California based or are you overseas?
Yeah, so the company itself is like HQ'd in San Francisco, but most of the development team is in Croatia. Actually, we have a couple of people in. I think one of our support agents is actually in Asia, and one of our other support agents is somewhere around Central Europe, and our CEO is, I guess, flying back and forth from the US and Croatia as well. But I'd say that like 90% of our development and team is focused in Croatia.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm guessing obviously your job's remote then as a result of this.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the let's say primary are, let's say, my CTO and the VP of engineering are working from Split. It's a little coastal city in Croatia, and because I'm studying in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, I'm currently staged in Zagreb, working from home remotely.
Okay, fair enough. So you've attended a variety of different developer conferences. What are the top ones you would recommend for developers? And on a personal note, any good ones, in your opinion, in the UK to attend?
Yeah, so I'd say that the let's say the highlight of last year was that we got to travel a lot. I think we attended like 6 or 7 conferences last year. I got to speak at, I think, 3 or 4 of them. One virtually and 3 of them live. I'd say I wouldn't say the best, but the conference that we got the most feedback from and the best fit for Codeanywhere as a company was We Are Developers, I think, and it was basically my first live international talk at VR Developers, and I think it really went really great. And some of the other, let's say, conferences worth mentioning, I think, is Shift. It's a conference in Zadar, actually, in Croatia. It's a conference that was founded in Croatia, and it's gotten really huge in the last couple of years. I got this opportunity to speak at that conference as well. And also, I'd mention, I think, KubeCon. KubeCon is a Kubernetes conference that is hosted in actually Europe, NA, and Asia as well. We attended actually the Europe and North American version in Detroit the last year, and I think the KubeCon in Valencia in Spain was really a quality conference where we got to talk about actually a lot of people that are familiar with Kubernetes and Kubernetes specialists, and we got to share our, let's say, uh, our methodology of using Kubernetes to spin up cloud-based development environments. So we really enjoy that. On the note of UK conferences, we actually unfortunately didn't attend any UK conferences, but I think I got um, I got a few recommendations to go to. I think it's called. Lead Dev or DevCon or DevOps UK, I think it's called, something like that. And I think, I mean, if we get a chance to go this year to some UK conferences, I think it will be great. But unfortunately, we didn't get a chance last year.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll check down. I've had a quick Google. I think it is lead dev, all one word as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's saying the next one is June 27th and 28th of this year. So, I mean, I'll check that out. Something I might, potentially, go to and have a look, see what, because I've never really been to, I've been to, meetups for entrepreneurs and some programming meetups like via meetup.com, but I've never been to a developer conference per se. So be interesting to see what they're like, and to sit in the talks as well
Yeah.
and see what people are,
Yeah, conferences are
obviously
really
putting
a
out.
great opportunity to meet very like-minded people and some not so like-minded people, but it's a great place to have a conversation with developers and with people of similar interests. So conferences are really a great hub to share ideas and pick up on some other ideas from other companies. So it's really I'd recommend every company attend conferences as much as they can, or every developer that can attend conferences to go to your local conferences or international conferences. It's really a great place to be and to have conversations with your peers.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you'll meet people in person, especially that you generally otherwise wouldn't. So yeah, you'll be definitely recommended. And just like I was saying before, do meetups as well if you can't do a conference or there isn't a conference, for a few months, for example. There'll be meetups that probably won't be too far from where you live, and you'll be able to connect with different people, make friends, potentially make potential colleagues, and collaborate with people, and just learn what people are up to, because I've been to these meetups before, and there'll be somebody asking a question and they'll be using terminology that I've just never heard of before, even if I'm in that space, just because I haven't been exposed to
Yep.
that particular thing. And then I'll Google it and be like, oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
And then it'll just, open my eyes to, a certain aspect of the industry that I otherwise wouldn't have known. So, how many users does Code Anywhere have? Because I mean, personally, I don't know anyone that uses Code Anywhere, but it's been around for a while, and I know they've had funding as well. So, I'm assuming there's a decent amount of users.
Yeah, so we do have on our current platform that's live that you're probably using, we have, I think, about 4,500 users monthly. And we also have some currently deployed on-premise installations for our newest platform. The newest platform is going live in a couple of weeks probably, and then probably going to be uh, we're going to be deciding if we want to shift over the old users to the new platform or leave the new platform going and then just replace it with the new platform and stuff like that. But currently, so I'd guess 4,500 developers using it as a SaaS solution. We have some also schools that are using the platform for educational purposes, and companies that are using the new platform as an on-premise installation as well.
Okay, fair enough. And what would be your biggest regret in your development journey so far?
The biggest regret, so actually not sure. I think I've had it. I wouldn't say I had it easy. I just took the right opportunities at the right time. So I mean, I started off in. Some people tend to say that their biggest regret is not starting earlier. I think I started early enough because I started like in elementary school coding QBasic. You probably don't even know what QBasic is.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't ring a bell.
so QBasic is an ancient programming language that I basically used to go to algorithm competitions in elementary school, and then in high school I started using C++ and for algorithms as well, and then I actually joined the Young Association of Programmer, the Association of Young Programmers in Split, where I was going to high school. So, and then I started doing some more serious projects with them. We actually organized a few conferences in Split as well, tech conferences, which are really getting big now, and they're just, I'd say, student conferences organized by students and volunteers, but it's getting pretty big every year. And from that point on, I just got a job at Codeanywhere. I had a few jobs before that, but I got a job at Codeanywhere the year I went to university. So I think 4.5, 5 years ago, and now I'm here. So I wouldn't say I have any huge regrets. I think it's going pretty well for me so far.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So you mentioned QBasic. I just had a quick Google of it. It's definitely very old
Yeah.
looking, and I'm pretty sure you're younger than me. Like, so why did they, teach or use QBasic then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that like the educational system in Croatia could use some work. So that was I was like fourth grade elementary. So that was like it was like 12 years ago. So 12
Yeah,
years
not that
ago.
long ago.
Yes.
Like, yeah, because 12 years ago, I was in my first slash second year of university, and nobody was using QBasic.
Yeah, I mean, QBasic is really an ancient programming language. I think it was used in our elementary school just because it wasn't actually just because of our elementary school. It was because of the algorithm competitions were actually held in QBasic, so they had to teach us QBasic so we can attend the school competitions in algorithms. So I guess that's the problem of the, I'd say, educational system in Croatia, not just our school that was teaching it.
Fair enough. So, what advice, after all these years and all these experiences that you've had, what advice would you give to other developers on their journey, or people that are trying to become programmers and aren't programmers yet?
So I'd say that the main advice I'd have to give is just, I mean, it sounds corny, but it's just do it. So basically, it's just start off from somewhere. I mean, I started, I'd say, by accident in elementary school using QBasic. You're, of course, not going to use QBasic for anything nowadays. So I'd say just pick up a YouTube tutorial or Codecademy or Coursera, any tutorial that you may find. Uh, I'd say that don't invest any money right away into it. Um, People say that you should maybe invest some money because it gives you the urgency to start something new. I'd say that's good advice as well. But to start off, just find a tutorial, find some YouTube personality that you like, and then follow them along with some tutorials they give, and try to do something that's fun. I mean, when I started QBasic, I basically started off with algorithms in elementary school, but then I just Googled on YouTube how to make a game using QBasic, and then uh, I actually just pressed pause on a video and then copied the entire code base from a YouTube video until I got the game running. So, and then from that, I learned some new concepts using that YouTube video. And then from that point onward, it just got even easier and easier. I say the main let's say skill that you need to have as a developer is your like problem solving process. So I guess you just have to get into the mindset of development and the mindset of solving different development issues and programming issues. And I think that's something that you can't learn from a book. I think that's something that comes from experience. So the main, let's say, the main advice I have to give is just do it. Just find some tutorials to start off to make a simple piece of software that you will enjoy using, like a game or like an app for, I don't know, to-do list or something like that. And then apply for internships, for unpaid internships. Just apply to like 20, 30 of them. You'll get into one eventually, and then you will have the opportunity to learn from a mentor, from someone that has been has been in the space for a while. And then basically the doors open themselves from that point on, because the space currently is so, I'd say, open. Everyone, I mean, some people might say that because of the economic crisis, people are losing their jobs in development and people are scared for developers. I'd say that we're not currently in the stage where you should be scared that development positions will run out. You just have to go in and find it and grab it and apply for different positions, and just, I'd say, just do it. So that's I think it.
Yeah, definitely, have a go, learn as much as you can, off YouTube, off Codecademy, off these platforms, set up a GitHub repository, put some projects on there. I know a lot of people that are starting off, they have this sort of concern that, their stuff isn't good enough to put on there. And it's like, it's better to have something on there than to have nothing. You're not going to get to a point that you have something amazing unless you start by putting it on there. Plus, you'll learn how to use GitHub, how to use, these different tools, which are important as well. So as you're going along with a simple, let's say, single HTML file, then a CSS, and then with a JavaScript, and then resources as well, you'll figure out how to use this platform, how to leverage these, environments. So, just put the content out there, like you're saying, apply to internships. It doesn't have to be paid. If you get a paid one, great. If you don't, that's fine as well. And again, say to the company that maybe you can't do it full time. Maybe you can just do 1 day a week. If you're doing it for free, a company might be like, yeah, 1 day a week we'll have some a free intern for that 1 day a week. So do that, get some experience on your belt. If you know friends or family that might have their own company or they're working on their own projects, ask them if you can do some work with them for free and basically put them as a reference on your CV. You could get 6 months whilst you're learning,
Yep.
like that, and that'll go a long way because as soon as you finished, let's say, learning, obviously learning should be a continual process throughout your life, but as soon as you think you're ready to get a regular paid developer role, you might already have 12 months of experience effectively on your CV just because you've done some internships or you've worked with friends or family on some projects that they're working on, because you don't realistically need to tell the employer that, oh, it was with a friend, if let's say you actually did some coding on that role.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if you've done part-time 6 months on some website that a friend was making and you was helping them do some HTML. That's fine. You did some HTML for 6 months,
Yep.
so like that'll help a lot. And then obviously have your portfolio. Make sure it's as solid as possible. Make sure you're doing regular commits as well. So there's the age. See, that's the other thing. If let's say you don't get to a point where you're happy enough to put your code on GitHub for 2 years, that's 2 years of potential commits and history on GitHub that you won't have. You'll have nothing at that point. Whereas if you've been doing it for 2 years, so somebody, an employer or a recruiter, look and be like, okay, they've got an active GitHub. Okay, like some of them will just look at it at that aspect and say it's active, it's fine.
Yeah, I'd say that you shouldn't be like embarrassed to put anything out there.
Mm,
Like just dump it on GitHub. Anything you code, basically just dump it on GitHub publicly.
yeah.
I think that helps a lot because it gets you into the mindset that you want to do something to commit and to make something, let's say, workable. But also, as you said, it shows your employers and people that you're working actively and that you're learning and that you're making basically progress on yourself and on your code. So I think just like committing as much as possible and like putting it all out there is solid advice, and you should like try to start from there. And also you can, I don't know, DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter if you need any advice. I'm always open to anyone that wants to learn, and to I don't know, if you need a review for a project or something like that, just ping me over there and I'll try to help out.
Yeah, I mean that would be great. So, Toma, after the podcast, if you just DM me on LinkedIn, your obviously I've got your LinkedIn already, but your Twitter,
Yep.
and I'll put that in the description for the podcast. So anyone listening that does want to message Toma that has some questions or maybe just got some queries about Code Anywhere about using it, you'll be able to access that in the description. So I think that'll be a great way of connecting with Toma.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've got some fun, more generic questions now. And would you rather run a 10-person company or a 1,000-person company, and why?
Okay, so that's a nice question actually. So I'd say that there's benefits to both, I think.
Mhm.
So a 10-person company work, we can categorize Code Anywhere as a 10-person company right now. And the thing is with 10-person companies is it's tough. I mean, not tough like it's hard to work in. It's just that all the processes are much more abundant, I'd say. So you have to handle a lot more stuff when you have a 10-person company. Not just you, basically everyone in the company has to be more versatile. I'd say the startup life is how you would describe it, where you have a lot of people with a lot of different skills working towards the same goal. And I'd say that a 10-person company is more hectic, but I'd say again it's more fun. I've had a lot of fun working at Code Anywhere for the past 4.5 years, where I basically done, I don't know, marketing jobs, sales, security, software development, speaking at conferences, developer relations, developer advocacy. So in a 10-person company you can really learn a lot. uh, on the other hand, like a 1,000-person company offers, I guess more stability. So to reach that 1,000-person status, you have to have some stability in the company. You have to have, I don't know, a steady revenue stream, or processes that basically for don't allow you to fail so easily.
Hmm.
And the 1,000-person companies offer the stability in the sense that you don't have to, I don't know, be you can basically work 9 to 5, and from that point on you're done for the day. Whereas with a 10-person company, it's always longer days where you have to think about more stuff on a daily basis, or on a weekly basis. So I guess that the the answer itself is basically depending on what the person wants. Does the person want a bit more fun, a bit more versatile and hectic environment, or does the person want a bit more stability and a bit more, let's say, narrow focused ideas and processes inside the company? So I guess the answer depends on that. For me personally, I'm young, so I guess the 10-person company has more appeal because I like a more diverse and versatile and like hectic environment. So I guess the 10-person company for me now is the right choice.
Fair enough. And would you rather have? We'll talk about it in US dollars. What would you rather have? 5 million US dollars upfront, or 500,000 for the rest of your life, and why?
You mean like 500,000 year over year, or?
Yeah, year over year for the rest of your life. So if you die in 2 years, you only get 1 million. If
Yeah.
you die after 50 years, you get what, 25 million. So there's not the end. Obviously, every year you gain 500,000.
Yeah.
Or would you rather 5 million up front?
I mean, I guess it's an easy question. I guess it's like the 500,000 per year, because I mean, first of all, I'd say that uh, not to go too deep into the answer. I guess like just invest it and then let it go. I mean, it's gonna reach the 5 million status pretty quickly if you just invest the 500k you get every year. So I guess the 500k should be the answer every time.
Okay, so would you, if you're talking about the investment route, would you not get the 5 million and just invest that so you have more, you know, coming in? If you're talking about the investment
Yeah,
route.
but I think it's not that I think it's like 100% the case that because you're getting 500k year over year, it's basically 100% gain the first year, and then it's 50% gain the second year, and then 30% gain the year after, and then you're already on the point where the 5 million is not like growing so quickly as the 500k are getting each year. So I mean, the math itself is the, let's say, the you're gonna get the same amount of money in a few years, and then from that point on, where the 500k that are coming in are gonna eat up the 5 million really quickly. So the math itself, I think, works out in the favor of the 500k.
Yeah, so like my opinion on it depends on how confident you feel that let's say if you chose the 5 million route, if you, because it really only works out if you're talking about investing. I mean, it also depends on age, because let's say if you're 90 and you're given that option, you might say,
Okay, yeah, right, yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you're old, then you might think the
Yeah,
500,000 a year, because you can't pass this down to your kids or anything.
yeah,
It is like what you get. You might only get 1 year's worth,
yeah.
and you might not even want to go for the hassle of investing. So the 5 million might actually be a lot more attractive. But let's say if you're young, 20, 30, or even 40, then it's whether or not do you think and are you confident that you could deploy that 5 million within a few years in a better way than the 500,000 without making many mistakes? With the 500,000, you could make a mistake every year and lose it for 5 years,
Yeah.
and you'll still be fine because you're still getting it. Or you could live off half of it, invest the other half, and you could again lose it for a few years whilst you're figuring things out how to invest. You might not be an investor, you might not be seasoned, so you can make those risks. And that's the thing with the 5 million, you might be hesitant, and as a result not actually get the good returns because you're not willing to take the risks that you would because you've got the 500,000 guaranteed up front. So yeah, it definitely does, you know, depend on your age, how confident of an investor you are, because there'll be people out there that are seasoned investors and that's all they do, and they'll be like, I can turn the 5 million within a few years into something more than 500,000 a year, effective returns. So they would rather have that. But yeah, it definitely does depend on your life position, situation,
Yep.
and your, sort of how adverse you are to risk as well.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Yeah.
So, what's your favorite board game?
My favorite board game. I think I haven't played a board game in a while, so I think like Settlers of Catan is one of my favorites. Not sure if you heard of it. It's
I haven't.
yeah,
I've got it downstairs. A lot of people on the podcast do like that one.
yeah, yeah. I think
It's a favorite of theirs.
it's a pretty good game. I mean I've basically been playing it for I think 15 years, so I think it's a pretty good game. Not sure about any others. I'm not really heavy into board games, but Catan is a weakness, I'd say. So that or Risk as well.
Yeah, I find most people that say Catan, they say Risk as well, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got that one downstairs as well. I find with, honestly, I haven't played Catan and Risk that much, so I find that when we play it in our house, we don't fully know the the rules, so whatever version we end up playing isn't the
I
exact
mean, that's the
version.
fun of board games. You just make up
I mean,
your own rules and
it
you have
is,
fun.
yes. I mean, it's fun as long as everyone agrees to those rules. The problem occurs when you have your own set of rules and then you play with someone else and their set of rules are like, the Bible for them. And you're like, you can't do that. And they're like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's how you play this board game. It's like, no, that's not how we play it. And then you have an argument, say, yeah, and you basically say, let's check the rule book, and it turns out you're both wrong. It's not, and
Yeah,
none
yeah.
of the methods are in the rule book.
That's the fun of board games. You make up your own rules just so you win, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I always nowadays try and lay out the the rules that I have, especially the ones that might be a bit different. Because if we're gonna play, even if we don't play by my rules, I want to know from the start. Because that way, I don't want to do something and you're like, "Oh, you can't do that."
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things, like in like Monopoly, for example, that's my favorite board game. One of the things I like doing, again, it's not really the rules of the game per se, but I don't like showing my money and my cards. I like to hide them. Yeah, again, there's nothing nefarious about it per se, but I don't like for people to know, what I have. If I'm in a bad or a good situation, and I try and keep a poker face on. So I could be buying stuff up, and I could be in a bad situation, but the other people get scared and they make some stupid moves, or vice versa. I could not be buying something up, but I'm sitting on a whole lot of cash. But it's just a lot of people that I play with, it really rubs them up in the wrong way that I don't put my money and my cards on the table for them to be able to see. And it's like,
Yeah, I
one,
think
this is,
I'd be one of those people that would get mad
yeah,
about that.
like,
I like when you know about how much money does everyone have in Monopoly. Not sure why,
yeah,
but I think it's easier to mess up someone's game if you know how much money they
of
have.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. If I know that Toma only has 200, I can, or force you to make deals that you otherwise wouldn't. But if I know you've got loads of money, then I'm like, okay, I need to, make deals with this other person. That's fair enough. The way I see it is, it's like real life. I don't know how much money you got in your bank account. I don't know how many houses you've got. And same with other people, most other people, you don't know the situation. So this is just a reflection of that. As long as you're not cheating by hiding it,
Yeah, I guess that's
um,
fair. That's a fair
yeah,
statement. It's
yeah. But I know it definitely rubs and irks people, in the wrong way, especially when they start losing. Because when they start losing, and that's when they really get pissed that you're not showing them
yeah,
everything you've got.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would be your favorite video game?
Video game. I was heavy into World of Warcraft for a couple of years, and then and League of Legends, I guess, for the past 10 since it's been out. I played it from day one, I think. And I don't know, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, Overwatch 2 now that it's out, or Fortnite and stuff like that. So nothing out of the ordinary, I'd say.
Okay. So, it seemed like you're a pretty regular gamer. What video game are you looking forward to?
uh, I was looking forward to Hogwarts Legacy for a long time. I didn't get the chance to buy it yet and to play it. Didn't really have time, so I guess I'm looking forward to playing Hogwarts Legacy really soon.
Okay. Yeah, I bought that for my wife when that came out because she's a huge, Harry Potter fan, and I haven't played it yet. I do want to play it, but I've watched her play, it, and honestly, it does look good. Like
Yeah,
you can tell that the delays were worth it because that's the thing. When a product, movie or especially a game just keeps getting delayed and delayed, and it comes out and it ends up being rubbish, and you're just like, oh, why did it delay? And it's
yeah,
bad
yeah,
anyway. It might have actually felt better just coming out when it did. But like watching it, I'm like they put a lot of effort into it. It clearly looks good. It clearly looks fun to
yep,
play, and they've got a deep, rich, environment and world in there. So it's something I want to play. But it seems like if you're into Harry Potter, you'll have a blast playing
yeah,
it.
definitely. I can't wait.
Yeah. So now onto the question that I love asking everyone to see, their responses. Does money buy you happiness, and why?
Okay,
Oh,
so
and on top of that, what does a good life mean to you?
okay, so I always say that everyone who says money can't buy happiness is full of crap, because I think there's a limit to how much happiness money can buy, and it's like I'd say it's a it it money can buy a certain amount of happiness because, for example, you you want to buy a new car, you buy a new car with the money you have and you're happy for a while, and then you buy another car, and you buy 10 cars, and the 11th car won't bring you much happiness, right? So the same thing is with, I don't know, computers, laptops, houses, and boats or whatever. I think the happiness that money buys really can fall off really quickly. So I think that a certain amount of happiness can be bought with money, but not like in perpetuity. I think like uh, there was there's always statements about those really really rich people that say that money can't buy happiness, but I think they were happy to the point where they can buy basically anything, and then once you can buy everything, there's no like rush to, I don't know, save up money for a new computer or save up money for a new car, and then when you buy it, it's a sigh of relief and joy because you bought it. I think that money should have a cap, because then after that it's, I'd say, steady decrease of joy that you get from money.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like
Yeah,
it's one of those things that it's a tool, and like you said, it's great to have money to be able to buy a car, and that happiness that you'll get to be able to buy a car, and then on top of that, knowing that you've got money if something goes wrong, that you need
yeah,
to replace the tires, the brake pads, whatever that £1,000 or £2,000 expense comes in,
yep,
every year, when do the MOT, or you have your car serviced, you're like, okay, I don't want to do it, but it's fine, I can easily afford it.
yep,
It's like if you have to have a £1 expense, most people wouldn't care about that.
yep,
Like if it's like that to you, then that's fantastic. But then if you buy one car and then let's say you buy another one, let's say for your partner, so that's great as well. So you both have one each, and maybe one for your children if they're old enough. But then after really that, it gets to a point where like, do you really need another one?
yeah,
It becomes flashy, increases, it releases that endorphin rush, and then you're like, okay, it's gone away now.
yep,
I think it'd be better for people to, let's say, get the car, one or two, however many they really really need. Have the money there so the cars can be looked after. Again, some people might want a slightly more expensive one, slightly cheaper one. That's fine. And then say, okay, I've got the car stuff sorted now. I'm not gonna get much happier because the rate of diminishing returns with cars. Let's look at my house now. Maybe a slightly bigger house, an
Yeah.
extension, or a few nice things around the house. But then be like, okay, I've capped out at probably my happiness peak for house now. Now, okay, let's look at holidays. Do a couple of holidays a year. Okay, now I've capped out at that. Then, okay, my kids' education. Maybe starting up a hobby. So you can spend money and be happy, but thinking that you're just gonna get the latest flashiest thing and that's just gonna make you happy is the wrong way to go
Yeah.
about it. I think
Yeah.
the more sensible way is knowing that the money's there for when you need things and when you actually want things. Because let's say if you're at a point where you're just like, you know what, it's been a year since I bought a new pair of trainers. I wouldn't mind a new pair of trainers now, and you wouldn't mind buying something slightly expensive for £200, some limited edition ones. That's fine. But if you're just buying them every week, trust me, you're not going to be as happy as just knowing that you can just buy a new pair when you really need to or when you really want to, for example.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, so that's my take on money, and I think it kind of seems similar to your take as well. There's a lot that you can do with it. It provides obviously a lot of freedom as well from stresses, of the world, like bills, bills on, expenses, like for your car, for example, knowing that they're just covered, but then knowing that you can still have a lot of happiness from stuff that's either free or cheap. For happiness from going to the cinema with your family, from going to the park, going on a walk. Because there's been times where I've gone on a hike with friends or family, and it's been really, really, an enjoyable experience. And it's pretty much a free
Yeah,
experience.
of
Obviously,
course. Yeah.
I've taken a backpack with a few snacks in there,
Yeah.
but the snacks have been cheap, and just some cold drinks as well. But apart from that, yeah, it's nice to have a nice car to drive there in. But you don't need 10 cars to be able to take you there. That one nice car will do the trick.
Yeah.
And knowing that, and then doing the hike, and then knowing, okay, if you want to go out for some food, you can afford to go out, or if you want to go home and you know order in, or if you want to go home and sit down and watch some Netflix on your nice TV. But there gets a point where you just need enough of each thing, and that makes you happy. And then you need to find meaning in your life and hobbies and people to, and that's another big thing for people, find meaning in life, but also people to share that meaning with as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd say that's some pretty sound advice.
Yeah, so I mean that's all the questions I've got for this episode of the podcast. I want to thank you, Toma, for coming on. Do you have any last closing words for anyone listening?
So I mean, regarding like development, I'd say that I don't want to pitch code anywhere too much really here, but I'd say
I
that
mean, go for it. I love the platform. That's the reason I reached out to people that work at
awesome,
Codeanywhere because I was like, I've been using it for I don't know 5-6 years at least now,
awesome, awesome.
and it's something that I love. So I was like, I want to get somebody on here.
So I mean, I'd say that we at Codeanywhere think that the, let's say, new era of development will be cloud focused, and I mean not to like not mention AI here. I think AI will be a big part of it, but regarding where you will be doing your development, we at Codeanywhere think that it will shift toward the cloud, and it is shifting toward the cloud because a lot of companies, big companies, are actually developing internal tools to code in the cloud using cloud-based development environments. And we believe that that Code Anywhere can be a platform that will allow single developers and companies to code in the cloud more efficiently and securely, and as an on-premise installation and as a self-service platform in the browser. And we really believe that developers should have an open ecosystem, that anything can go on our cloud-based development environments, and it should be as fast, as secure, and as efficient as possible. And we want the Code Anywhere to be a platform to enable all of that. And I mean, regarding any other advice, if you're a new developer learning, just learn, find the YouTube tutorial, DM me on Twitter if you want any advice. I can send you over a list of tutorials if you want, and just keep learning and apply to positions, and just keep an open mind and do what you do what you love, and you'll end up in the industry some way or the other.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, definitely sound advice. Just just keep going, pump content out there. GitHub, maybe even YouTube or on Twitter. Blog posts as well. So that's a great way of doing it. And like Tom was saying, reach out to him and just be willing to reach out to other people as well.
Yep.
Because Toma, I didn't know before this podcast, everyone. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he was nice enough to connect, to come onto the podcast, talk about Codeanywhere. But if I had said to myself that I don't know him and I can't get him on as a result, I would never have had someone from Codeanywhere on the platform, and most of the other guests on FireDEV as well. So be willing to reach out. Worst case, they say no, and I find worst case they just won't. They just won't even say no. They'll just ignore you. So it's a numbers game. Be willing to reach out again. It's whether you're getting a job, trying to get somebody on your podcast, trying to meet new people, whatever it is. Reach out. Be willing to say hello, ask for help, and I find most people are nice enough that they'll try and help. So for free as well. So that's just be willing to ask. So that'll be my advice as well.
Yep.
So thank you, Toma, for coming on. Thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of FireDEV. I'll see you next week. If you enjoyed the podcast, then feel free to give it a 5-star rating on any of your podcast platforms, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.